Hi there. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Arthritis Life podcast, where we share arthritis life stories and tips for thriving with autoimmune arthritis. My name is Cheryl Crow, and I am passionate about helping people navigate real life with arthritis beyond joint pain. I've been living with rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years, and I'm also a mom, occupational therapist, video creator, support group leader, and I created the Rheum to Thrive self-management program. I am so excited to help you live a more empowered life with arthritis. We're going to cover everything from kitchen life hacks to navigating the healthcare system to coping with friends who just don't get it. Seriously, no topic is going to be off limits on this podcast. My interviewees and I share our honest stories of how chronic illness affects our lives. This includes discussions about mental health, sex, shame, pregnancy, body image, advocacy, self-acceptance, and so much more. You'll hear stories from all ends of the spectrum, from a person who's living in medicated remission from psoriatic arthritis to somebody living with severe mobility restrictions and severe pain from rheumatoid arthritis. You'll hear how people manage their conditions in different ways, like medications, mindfulness, movement, social support, work accommodations, and so much more. You'll also hear from rheumatology experts who just get it. We'll dive deep into the science behind chronic pain and what's the latest evidence for lifestyle changes that can help you thrive with arthritis, including exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, and more. This is your chance to sit down and chat with a friend who's been there. Ready to figure out how to manage your arthritis life? Let's get started. All right. Hello there. I am doing a solo episode for the first time in a little while. I'm recording this in July 2026, and I'm actually revisiting an episode I had first recorded in 2021, which was called, Can You Live a Normal Life with Rheumatoid Arthritis? So honestly, the reason I wanted to revisit this is that it's a question I still get. Like, one of the most commonly asked questions I get is some variation on this. They may not ask it outright, but what is my life going to look like? Can I do the things I wanted to do before I got this diagnosis? And I'm also in a little bit of a nostalgic era, as people might say, because of writing a book right now. I'm writing a book that at the current time I'm conceptualizing as part memoir, part self-help about my own journey with both rheumatoid arthritis and anxiety, and how my enemies to lovers arc with acceptance, and how at first I resisted acceptance and now it's been so crucial for me. So anyway, I've been going back through and looking at a lot of my old emails, a lot of old things from my past in order to piece together what some of the facts about what actually happened in my life versus the way that I remember them. Because if you've studied memory at all, you'll know that memory is it's a often fickle thing that changes over time. So anyway, I thought this would be fun to kind of share what I still agree with, or a lot of what I said in 2021, it still resonates today. And you'll probably be like, yeah, you've talked about this a million times about this idea of a normal life and why it's important to question that. But I also have some updated thoughts, especially because now this was episode 29 originally, and now we're on episode 219. So I've talked to over experts, patients, and I facilitated the support groups and seen new angles on this question. So that's what I'm going to do today, is provide some updated reflections. And then I'm actually attaching the audio from the original episode, just in case it's interesting for any of you. If you have ever felt completely lost or utterly alone while trying to navigate real life with rheumatic disease, listen up. I am here for you. I created an educational program to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks, and it's called Rheum to Thrive. After earning a master's in occupational therapy and completing hundreds of hours of additional training, I created a step-by-step guide to help you truly thrive with rheumatic disease. This is the only program I know of that's designed to improve quality of life for people living with inflammatory, autoimmune forms of arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis, Sjogren's disease, and more.
During the self-paced lessons, you'll learn how to manage pain and fatigue, cope with stress, navigate relationships, and continue doing the things that matter to you and bring you joy. The goal is really to help you improve your quality of life and learn how to thrive with your rheumatic disease right now, rather than waiting for a distant day when it might be cured or healed. I really created the down-to-earth, practical, heartfelt resource I wish I had had when I was first diagnosed at age 20. If you want even more in-depth support, you can join the 12-week Rheum to Thrive virtual support group, where you'll be surrounded by people who actually get what you're going through, people who will provide the encouragement, validation, and support that you deserve. Each group is expertly moderated, so you don't have to worry about the kind of misinformation that spreads like wildfire in the free-for-all social media groups. If you're on the fence, don't just take my word for it. Here's what Katie had to say in March 2023. I was lost and overwhelmed with my RA diagnosis. It felt overwhelming to know what to read, what to do, how to spend my energy trying to research on the internet. Rheum to Thrive did that for me. It's been like getting a crash course in my diagnosis along with a community who gets it. To see all the details, including the dates for the next support groups, go to the link in the show notes or bit.ly/thriverheum with a capital T and capital R. You can also just email me anytime at info@myarthritislife.net. And don't delay if you're interested, because each group is capped at 16 people or less in order to make a small, intimate group atmosphere. Thanks so much for your time, and I can't wait to get started with the next groups. And I can't wait for those of you who are interested in the self-paced option to go ahead and join that at any time. Bye-bye for now.
Okay, so the central question we're trying to answer: can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? I told you, you'll hear me talk about this back in 2021, that I didn't even know how common this question was until I looked at the data of my own website and figured out that this was actually a common question, that this search engine optimization was leading people to my website. And so I think the very, very simple version of the story is, it completely, whether or not you are able to live a quote unquote normal life with rheumatoid arthritis, completely depends on your own individual definition of what a normal life is. If your only definition of a normal life is a life without illness, injury, or disability and with perfect health, then no. By definition, having a chronic progressive disease would not be compatible with a definition of a normal life that's only 100% fully able-bodied and healthy in every single possible way. For that reason, I actually think it's unhelpful to address the question from that angle and to assume that a normal life has to be one where you're perfectly able-bodied, because that's not what a lot of people get. And I think what people are asking when they say, can I live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis, they're actually really asking, will I still have a good life? Can I still be happy? Can I still pursue my dreams? Is my life over? And there's definitely a lot of despair people often go through, and that leads them after the diagnosis to ask this question. And I think that those deeper questions are a lot more important, I think, than necessarily the direct question of, will your life be normal? Because what is normal anyway, right? You might be 100%. I think a lot of people assume that, well, if normal means healthy and able-bodied, that's going to make my life easier, and therefore it's going to be easier to be happy and pursue my dreams. And at the same time, though, we have to realize that there's always inevitably some challenges in your life. You may have perfect health, but you may have a psychosocial challenge with someone in your workplace or a family member. No one gets a totally perfect life. So I think my view is still the same, that be careful what you define as your goal and make sure it's realistic. And so my original definition of normal, again, pre-diagnosis, was, I will say after all that, if I do put myself back in the place of Cheryl in 2003, being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, it was an important question to me. So I think this fact-finding mission I've been doing and this nostalgic revisiting of my past has been really helpful, because it's made me really confront, what did I actually say, think, and feel back then? And I do think I had a more simplistic idea of what rheumatoid arthritis was. And I remember specifically my rheumatologist saying, our goal is to get you back to normal, quote unquote, back to what your life was like before you first had symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. So, and I found that concept comforting. So the question is complicated. It's more complicated than it seems on face value. And my definition of normal was pretty simple, like back to what I was feeling and doing and able to do and feel before my diagnosis. And I think what I didn't realize at that time was like kind of had this idea that a lot of our culture reinforces was that good health was a prerequisite to a good life. Now, as I said in 2021, and I'll say again today, does a chronic illness make your life harder? Yes, it makes it harder in the domain of health. It doesn't, but I still strongly argue to this day that doesn't mean it's worse. Harder doesn't mean worse. It just means harder, right? So that's how I think about that definition, the importance of that definition of normal. And so, you know, again, I already kind of said this, that our culture defines normal as healthy, productive, and oh yeah, our culture in the United States is especially focused often on independence and being able to do everything yourself. And that's actually a really narrow definition of what makes a meaningful, rich, and joyful life. And I think it represents a bit of an ableist standard. Ableism is the invisible assumption that non-disabled bodies are the standard everyone should strive for, and that a good life depends on meeting that standard. And that's such a narrow definition. And everyone in life inevitably is going to experience some limitation, whether that's from disability, illness, aging, grief, or just the fact that we are all mortal beings. So I think the biggest shift in my thinking in the 20 plus years since I was diagnosed is the goal is no longer for me. My goal is no longer getting back to exactly the life and the function I had before rheumatoid arthritis. It's being able to build a life I genuinely love now and build the resilience and the capacity to find meaning, find joy, and love my life even with a bunch of obstacles. Before, I thought, okay, well, the way to have a good life is to conquer everything bad and only feel good. And that was just a little bit oversimplified. So, just to clarify, reaching remission I still have a goal of remission for my rheumatoid arthritis, in that I want to get my inflammation under control. I want my disease to be as close to remission as possible. So me saying that the defining your life, a normal life, as only life without chronic illness is limiting. I don't mean to oversimplify it to say that I don't hope for remission for myself and everyone else. Remission is going to give you a better chance of just longevity, and good health enables some really important aspects of quality of life and such. So it's just, the idea is that achieving remission and returning back to what you used to be able to do, that may be very achievable and meaningful to you. But I also think that we limit ourselves if we only define a good life or a happy life as one where we've gotten all the way back to that old normal. Does that make sense? So sorry, I feel like I'm being maybe a tiny bit repetitive, but that's my inner critic coming out. All right, so here's where acceptance comes in. So I think that definitely in the last 5 years, I've deepened my understanding of the importance of acceptance in chronic illness, and really acceptance as part of the framework of the therapeutic and psychological framework of acceptance and commitment therapy. But I think you could say mildly, or you could under exaggerate by saying that I used to think of acceptance as like a quote unquote 4-letter word, or like a bad word. And I thought that acceptance of whatever I don't like, whether that's accepting my own limitations, accepting an outcome I didn't think was fair. I struggled with acceptance. And in the context of chronic illness, I felt I had a knee-jerk reaction that acceptance doesn't make sense for me to think about, because it felt like acceptance means giving up or settling. And I've really recently started linking this resistance to acceptance to my identity as an overachiever. And I am actually, by the time you hear this recording, there is going to be a Sjogren's Summit, which I'm doing a talk there called The Overachiever's Guide to Acceptance. And so I think that's been a big aha moment for me, realizing, oh yeah, I identified my identity as somebody who works really hard and can solve problems and can achieve anything she puts her mind to. And that's great. As my therapist pointed out, that's great for problems that are solvable. But your health is not fully a solvable problem. And that's what took me a long time it took a long time for that to sink in. And I think as an overachiever, it feels like the only tool you really have is this tool of working harder, researching more, right? Becoming obsessive and being like, okay, I don't have to accept that I have rheumatoid arthritis. I'm going to figure out how to or maybe you think that you accept it, but then you're like, but I'm just going to conquer it or heal it or cure it. And but by the way, if there is a real cure that comes out, I'm going to take it. But I think that the concept I also find really helpful is what in science is called the null hypothesis, which is that the null hypothesis is that your intervention won't work. And the null hypothesis is that things will not change. So that whatever the status quo is what will continue. So it's what you kind of you assume things won't change in the future when it comes to science. And then you test your intervention against quote unquote the null hypothesis, which is, so you say, okay, if I give this group of people this medication, will it change their status quo? And so long story short, the null hypothesis is that right now, because today in this hour and this minute, there isn't a cure, I need to kind of plan my future for what's real in the moment, not necessarily what I wish will happen. So I think, again, it's very unintuitive and very difficult to kind of what I call now using ACT language or acceptance and commitment therapy language is dropping the rope of control. Because you're like, well, what do I do with my hands now? I'm used to pulling and tugging and fighting against whatever is a challenge for me. And the irony and the paradox of acceptance is that the only way out is through, and the way to win is to not resist reality. The way to win the tug of war is to drop the rope. And so that when I was finally willing to let go of my grip, metaphorically, on control, and that I have to just work harder and become the perfect patient and then my life will be better, it opened up the door to, wait a minute, how can I craft a life that is good, that includes challenging stuff, like including rheumatoid arthritis, including pain, including fatigue, including the symptoms, and not just myopically focusing on symptom control. So for in ACT, acceptance doesn't just mean passively taking whatever is coming at you. Another way that Russ Harris, the author of The Happiness Trap, which is my favorite book on acceptance and commitment therapy, he explains that another synonym for acceptance is willingness. So are you willing to take what life is offering to you? And that's actually my favorite one, is just taking what's offered, defining acceptance as life is offering you this, are you going to take it? And whatever life offers you, a lot of things that maybe some of them are good, some of them are bad, but life might be offering, I'm going through experience right now of grief where I found out that an old friend I lost touch with has died, and that's what life is offering me right now. And instead of resisting it and saying, oh, I'm going to self-soothe myself and convince myself it's okay and that I don't need to grieve, I don't need to feel any sort of quote unquote bad or uncomfortable emotion, I can say, yeah, this is what it is. I don't have to feel comfortable or happy all the time. It's okay to feel your feelings. So that's another kind of level of acceptance, acceptance of all feelings and all emotions are okay. And there's not learning to not have a value judgment on that. But anyway, the most difficult thing for me still to this day to accept is the fundamental uncertainties and the kind of random flares and randomness of autoimmune life that's still challenging. And but I've had to practice flexing, quote unquote, this muscle of acceptance, flexing the muscle of taking what life is offering without resistance. That's where the mindfulness comes in, by the way. That's why it's a mindfulness approach, a mindfulness plus behavior change, and saying, okay, what is happening in the present moment? In the present moment, my idea of what a normal life is, back to the central question, is maybe being threatened because I don't think that it doesn't make intuitive sense maybe for somebody, just let's say a hypothetical scenario where someone has defined a normal life as one without a chronic progressive illness, and they're like, this can't be a normal life, and therefore I'm upset about that. And the ACT teaches you to say, okay, this is what it is. I don't have to like it, but this is my reality. And can I craft a good, meaningful life, take effective action, quote unquote, towards my values, and maybe redefine what normal can mean for me, or just throw the notion of normal out the window and say, I'm going to live a good life. And so acceptance, again, is kind of being willing to carry with us whatever is uncomfortable or challenging, along with the comforting things on our quest to live a good life, however we define that. So it means acknowledging reality, making room for uncertainty, and refusing to postpone my life until everything's fixed. That's been one of the biggest reframes and most helpful perspectives for me. So again, one of the nuances is that acceptance of what is in the present moment is not mutually exclusive or does not preclude hope for a better future. I take my medications. I hope that they work. I hope I can be in remission. I do things that I know that do help manage my symptoms. So I don't just say, oh, this is what it is. Like I'm accepting everything forever and ever. I just say, okay, I've done whatever I can. I've exercised or prioritized sleep, or I've connected to my values through meaningful action, like reaching out to a friend or something like that. And then I allow myself to live in the present moment. So I hope that that makes sense. I think it's a more succinct way to put it, perhaps. I'm not my strength, but succinctness, but is that maybe r- making it so that your happiness is no longer contingent on everything going according to your plan, which as a recovering control freak, that is, again, kind of like it can feel like a scary transition because your control gives you a sense, or that feeling like that you're good at making plans, you're good at working hard to achieve them, and learning that, for me, the hard thing was learning that, okay, well, you can't achieve perfect health fully because it's not perfectly under control. So the other thing I wanted to just mention before we get to the original episode, in case that hopefully any of this is helpful to you all, but is now 5 years later from when I first recorded this, I've interviewed a lot more people. I've talked, and not just interviewed for the podcast, but also just made friends with or connected to through conferences or on social media, lots, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of more patients. And what's really interesting is this question of can you live a normal life is a little bit similar to what does it mean to thrive with an autoimmune condition? And that people who thrive are not always the ones with the mildest disease or fully in remission. They're the people who've stopped waiting for their health to get perfect before fully participating in their lives. So I think you know, that is just a crucial thing to remember, because we can be blinded in our quest to resolve symptoms, which again, of course, and when you're in less pain, it is easier to do the things that you love and want to do in your life. Typically, I'm never going to argue against that. It's just that if we only make our whole life about that symptom resolving, we miss potential opportunities to live a good life alongside those symptoms. So the other thing I want to say is I would love to say, yeah, 5 years later, I have a PhD in acceptance and I understand everything about it and I'm like amazing at it. But no, it's still an ongoing process. It's an ongoing challenge. And honestly, one of my motivations for writing the book and exploring my relationship to acceptance is to help me clarify it for my own self, in addition to helping others. In a way, I think it's a very common experience to resist the present, resist whatever it is that's happening in your life that's not ideal, right? And that's kind of part of what makes humans so great, is that we're kind of idealists. We're like, how can we make this better? How can we make this better? But I think the kind of everything relates back to everything in my head, because it's just kind of how my brain works. But I'm like thinking about the overall wellness industry and how so many messages, they're trying to give people hope, but what they're subtly reinforcing is that all you have to do is do my diet program or my supplement program or change your mindset, and then your life will be great. And hinging all your hopes on achieving this perfect state in the future, which again, no one's life is perfect. So it's a more sustainable outlook to say, okay, I have two different toolboxes here. I've got my fixing toolbox. So I'm going to fix what's fixable with regards to my chronic illness, with regards to my anxiety, with regards to my health. And I'm not just going to have a lopsided toolbox that only has fixing tools. I have a two-level fixing or a two-level toolbox. So there's maybe that's a fishing box. One row, the bottom row is the fixing tools. And then the top row is the acceptance and adapting tools. Say, okay, some parts of this aren't going to get better necessarily, or I don't know if they're going to get better or not, but let's plan, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Now I'm going to have those set of tools so that I can craft a good life now. So my answer today to the question, can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis, is really that or it's similar to what I said in 2021, which is that it's not the question I find most important. The most important question is, can I build a joyful, meaningful, fulfilling life with rheumatoid arthritis along for the ride? And the answer to that is definitely yes. It is not easy. And in a way, I mean, this is me being a little bit defensive, but I'm like, it's easier in some ways to just focus only on fixing everything, right? It almost feels like it's harder to be like, it takes a lot of creativity, I think. It takes a lot of vulnerability to say, I am going to look in the face at all the things I can't control. It's painful initially, but again, once you get over that hump, it's still a practice. Like I said, it's an ongoing evolution, but it's made me, I really do feel a much deeper sense of resiliency as a result of confronting the limits of my control. Again, I've joked with both my therapists. It's like recovering control freak therapy. And again, both of them said the reason that people sustain controlling approaches is because they have worked for the people in the past. And it's not that there's nothing in my life I can control. There's X number of things I can control, X number of things I can't control. And I need to focus on for me, I would say my historical toolbox was much fuller for the things I can control. And I didn't have as many tools for coping with what I can't. Whereas now in 2026, as someone in my mid 40s, I have a lot more tools. Do I know how to use them all the time? No. Am I perfect at using them? No. But I at least have them. And that honestly is, I'm going to say just off the top of my head, because I have a little outline here, believe it or not, but that one of the things I love the most about the Room to Thrive ongoing community, like the alumni group where we meet every week, is that accountability, is being like, okay, I'm going to take an hour and 15 minutes out of my week. And of course, I'm the facilitator, or I have one of the certified facilitators facilitate it, but I also am myself benefiting from, let's look at this stuff. Let's remember what's in our toolbox. Let's grapple together with this kind of, there's what we can control, what we can't control, and the suffering that results from the difficulty with the uncertainty of where do you draw the line between what you can and can't control. There's like a third little layer of things I'm not sure I can control, I can partially control. So being able, I think one thing I've noticed just in all the people who have taken the program, the Room to Thrive program, is that almost everyone feels like they're doing it wrong and that everyone else figured it out. And it's no, in a way, I used to be so nervous to say that I haven't figured out everything, because I'm like, well, then people won't trust me as an expert and they won't think that I'm going to help them. But as I've said, actually, now the Thrive members are like, it actually is reassuring when you say you don't know everything, because it makes me realize that I'm putting too much pressure on myself to know everything so early on, when this person who's literally made a whole company and educational program and done hundreds of hours of continuing ed on this still doesn't know everything about it. It's because it's just the nature of rheumatic diseases, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory arthritis, musculoskeletal diseases, they're complicated. So I think, again, I think one of the best things that chronic illness has taught me is that good health is not a prerequisite for a good life. Does it make it easier if you have good health to do the things you want and need to do in your life? Yes, but it's not the only way to achieve a good life. So a meaningful life has never depended on having a perfectly functional body. And so I think that's kind of it's a release, right? It makes me feel like, again, a more sustainable version of hope and a more resilient outlook that, okay, I don't have to be a little perfectionist anymore. I can learn how to thrive and function without everything going according to my little plans. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to transition to sharing with you the original episode from 2021. And you're going to hear a younger version of me. I'm still in my 30s. No, but and again, I might explain a couple of things differently today, but you'll probably hear a lot of the similar themes. And I would absolutely, as always, love to hear from the listeners. Podcasting is kind of a funny thing because people are often listening, and I know this as a fan of many, many podcasts. I'm listening like when I'm washing dishes or when I'm walking the dog or when I'm driving. And so I don't always think to reach out to the people and ask a question or let them know that I like their podcast. But that would be, I love hearing from people who've listened, whether it's at the email info@myarthritislife.net or whether it's through social media. And I don't always get back right away because I've had some executive functioning challenges with my organization, but I would love to hear from you all. So, and see if this resonated, if there's anything that's confusing, because that's okay. I want to learn how to explain this better, especially because I'm writing a book about it. So I really want to figure out what are the things, what are the analogies. There's so many analogies for acceptance that I found really helpful. I have my finger trap toy right here. And so I'm trying to do a better job of getting feedback from people on what's working, what's not. So that's it for me from right now, but continue listening to get the 2021 take on it. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Bye. So the topic of today is, can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? And this is a complicated question. I first encountered this question actually when I was looking at my blog. I had a blog initially called theenthusiasticlife.com. It's still out there, but my main website now is arthritis.theenthusiasticlife.com. But anyway, I somehow was poking around my website and found out that for my most popular article, the search term that was leading people to this article or this blog post was, can I live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? And that really surprised me because I just didn't think it was something that people would search for in the Google search engine. I knew it was a question that would come across people's minds, but it's such a profound question. And I guess I just didn't know how common it would be to search it on the computer. And it turns out that if you look up, can I live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? It's 50 million. And can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? It's 6 million. So in general, at first I thought, oh, normal is a problematic concept for me. In my background, I've worked with developmental disabilities, and they used to call it abnormal psychology or abnormal human development. And there's this kind of connotation that normal is better and abnormal or anything that deviates from normal is worse. But I know that what people I think are getting at is, can I do the things that I want to do in my life that I hoped I could do before this diagnosis kind of put a big wrench in things. I did look up if there was any research on this. I was kind of curious as an occupational therapist. And there was a study that came out a few years ago, and the conclusion about this study from the University of Vienna said 80% of sufferers of rheumatoid arthritis can lead a normal life with the aid of medication. And this little study is in the show notes, but they said because of the newer treatments for rheumatoid arthritis, that it doesn't no longer causes permanent joint damage. And it used to be about 50% of people would have severe permanent joint damage, and the other 50% would have more moderate, I guess you would say. But now it's more like 80-20. So they're defining normal, from what I can see, as just lack of severe joint damage, which I think for a lot of people, they're hoping to achieve something a little bit more ambitious than that. So also, I would wonder myself, is my life kind of quote unquote normal or typical if I'm able to avoid severe joint deformity, but I still have to experience things like expensive medications, always having to have a job with health insurance in the US, doctor's appointments, side effects, family planning being affected by this. All these things are not typical things that someone my age who doesn't have rheumatoid arthritis has to think about. So I thought this is an interesting question, and especially in light of some of the programs I'm developing. So today's episode is a solo episode, just me talking about some of my perspectives on this, and hopefully this will spark a larger conversation. I would love to hear your thoughts and your ideas on social media or through email, info@myarthritislife.net. Let's just break it down a little bit further. So when you ask the question, can I live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? The first question I would have for you is, compared to what? And there's this hilarious video that I will put in the show notes, Marcel the Shell with shoes on. And it's a humor video, but it's a little shell with eyes and shoes. And she says, people think I look weird, but I say, compared to what? Meaning what do you compare a shell with shoes on to? Yeah, I know humor is subjective and you might be like, what is she talking about? But the point is, on a more serious note, when you say, can I live a normal life? Are you comparing it to other people your age? Are you comparing it to people across the globe? Are you comparing it to someone else in human history, your age or your gender 10,000 years ago? Right now, the life I'm living, even with a chronic illness, rheumatoid arthritis, plus some other health issues, my life is so much more luxurious than humans 10,000 years ago. They wouldn't even live till 39, or even 500 years ago. I'm living better than a queen practically, depending on which part of the world you're comparing it to. So I think we have to kind of ask again, this is the anthropologist kind of in me, but what are you comparing it to? And that's a really important question when we think about our own mental health. Because if you're always comparing yourself to someone who's got it better than you, there's always going to be somebody who does. There's always somebody who's doing better than you. There's always somebody who's healthier than you, prettier than you, seemingly richer than you, or happier than you. And if we only ever look ahead or look above us and say, oh man, I wish I had what they have, we're going to be disappointed. And also we're missing the greater perspective. What do we still have? What can we still do? Rheumatoid arthritis is a very devastating diagnosis for many people, but we still have abilities that other people don't have. So that's the first way I would look at it. I would ask, who are you comparing it to? I think a lot of people, when they think about, can I live a normal life? They're implying, can I live the life that I assumed I would have pre-diagnosis? And I would say, no, your life is going to be different than what you expected. Most people, if you expected a life without rheumatoid arthritis and you have a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, your life is going to be different than what you expected. Doesn't mean it's worse, but it is going to be different. I don't have the exact same life I expected to have, a life without rheumatoid arthritis when I was 20 and got this diagnosis. This was not in my life plan, but I think that I can still live a good life, and we're gonna get to that point soon. So, another way of defining normal, or can I live a normal life, would be, can I live a life where I can experience things that are important to me, like goals that I had before my diagnosis, like wanting to have a meaningful job, wanting to get married and have a family, engaging in meaningful hobbies? And then the answer for me is yes, but for other people, it might just be it depends, but usually yes, with some accommodation. For example, my hobbies were mostly amenable to what my body could handle, but some people's aren't. If your hobby is really, really hard on your body or requires a lot of pressure on your hand joints, like maybe, I don't know, glass blowing comes to mind, certain sports are going to be difficult if your disease is not well controlled through either medication or lifestyle factors. So this brings up one of the big questions, which is all these unknowns and uncertainties. If your disease goes into remission, or you're able to achieve medicated remission or unmedicated remission, then you can live pretty similar life to what you would imagine pre-diagnosis. Just if you're on medications, you just have to remember to take your medication and pay for it, and it will still affect your life, but your activities can be potentially the same. But if your disease is not responding to treatment and therapy very well, and you're still having a lot of pain and inflammation, it is going to affect your life more. So it's very, very hard in the beginning because you're not really sure what your normal range is going to be. I responded so well to my first medication. I thought that was just going to be how it was the rest of my life. I didn't think I would have to tweak and adapt things as much as I ended up doing. That was my journey. So, I mean, I wish we could just give everyone a map when they're diagnosed and say, this is what your trajectory is going to be. But unfortunately, that's not possible at this time. So, all of this is iterating on this idea of, can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? It really depends on what your definition of normal is and what are your hopes and dreams underneath that concept of normal. I wanted to look at it a little bit of a different way from my experiences with the kind of therapy I've been to, which is called acceptance and commitment therapy. So, one of my favorite quotes that relates to this is, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And that's from Gloria Steinem. So, the truth is, you probably won't get the exact same normal that you wanted or hoped or dreamed. And that's the part that might piss you off. And I wish I could say I have the magic pill or the magic cure that will make your disease totally go away. And I don't, and no one really does. There are people who have had different approaches that have worked really well for different people, but no one has the one cure or the one tool that is guaranteed to work for everyone as of today, March 24th, the day of this recording. So that's the bad news. That's the part that will piss you off. But the part that will set you free is the truth is that you can find a new normal, and a new normal that you can, I hope, learn to love. Doesn't mean that, again, it's as easy as the normal you had before your diagnosis. Doesn't mean that it's as simple, but I do really, I mean, this is maybe the optimistic part of me. I'm having some truth bombs on the one hand. No, I don't think you can just, everyone can just slide down a rainbow and have a perfect life with RA, but rheumatoid arthritis. But I do think that there are choices and adaptations and ways we can work around it and change our mindset and our habits and our coping skills to where we can still love our life. I really think that's true for most people. Another thing that I think is important to remember is that most people who are healthy and able-bodied, their definition of normal is continuing to be healthy and able-bodied, but that's actually not a guarantee for anyone. It's not a guarantee for the person who has the perfect exercise plan, the perfect diet. That person can still come down with a chronic illness. They can come down with cancer. Anyone can come down with anything at any time, and that is the reality. It is what it's always been the reality. You can definitely take steps. You can play the odds in your favor, right? If you exercise and you eat well and you avoid things that are more likely to cause cancer, you avoid smoking, tobacco, and stuff like that, yeah, you can help shift the odds in your favor, but there is no guarantee for anyone of a pain-free life. I just strongly believe that it's important to look that reality in the face. It's never been true in the human condition that there's just a way to completely avoid pain and suffering. So the sooner we can kind of confront that reality head on, and sooner we can say, okay, my life is going to have some degree of suffering, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, whether it's something else, it sets us free. And you might think, well, wait a minute, what? This is depressing. Why does thinking about suffering set you free? The reason it does is because it frees you from this pressure to try to achieve a perfectly pain-free life. No one gets that. So if we kind of get our expectations so high that if I just do the right thing, I just follow the right plan, I'm going to avoid pain and suffering the rest of my life. That is a lot of energy you're going to have to put into something that's ultimately, for most people, futile. The average person, let's say the average person is going to have some pain and suffering. Let's just make that kind of the null hypothesis, like they say in scientific experiments, right? The null hypothesis is that nothing will change or that your experiment won't have an effect. So let's say that the default state of human existence has been that it has many wonderful things, but we also inevitably come across pain and suffering. I don't mean just physical pain, but also psychological. So if we assume that that's kind of going to happen, then we're not surprised when it does inevitably happen. So that's been really an interesting thing for me to have to kind of come to terms with. So you might wonder, okay, wait a minute, how did you get here? Because a lot of people say to me things like, "Oh, you're so positive, you're so happy and bubbly." And I will say for the record that it's true that I think my parents say I was a happy baby. I have a little bit of a sunshiny kind of default brain wiring, but I'm not trying. I don't wake up every day and say, I want to feel perfect today. I want to feel sunshiny and rainbows every day. I have really realistic expectations of most of my days. And actually, I think that actually helps me feel happier because I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. When I first went to therapy, this is one of my favorite stories. I was kind of bragging to my therapist about how good I was at avoiding my pain and anxiety triggers. And he's, oh, it sounds like you've worked really hard to organize your life so that you can avoid pain and always try to feel the best you can. And I was like, yeah, I'm great. And he's, wait, that wasn't a compliment. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how is it wrong to try to control your life so you avoid pain or discomfort? What kind of therapist is this? And basically, again, he had to kind of over time help me confront the idea that control is often an illusion. And so basically, you can run, but you can't hide. Again, that might sound like what? Don't you want to give people hope? But the hope is that you can still live a good life despite inevitable pain and suffering. That's the hope. The hope isn't that you can avoid it because the avoidance is not a long term sustainable strategy. So, what I want to clear for a second, because I don't want to say like, we shouldn't do anything and nothing matters. No, we can take actions in our daily lives to absolutely have evidence based tools to manage our pain and function on a daily basis. I mean, that's like what I live for and I do all the time. Life hacks and routines and habits like exercise, sleep, hygiene, mental health, all these things we can do to reduce or minimize pain. So, tools are good. We should have tools. If we only focus on the tools to minimize pain, the problem can be the expectation or belief that we attach to the idea that if we just have the right tools, we are going to 100% be guaranteed to avoid all pain, guaranteed. And I do wish that were true, but realistically, it's just not true for most people because, again, pain, physical or mental, is an inevitable part of the human experience. So, as Dr. Russ Harris said in my favorite book, The Happiness Trap, the more we try to avoid the basic reality that all human life involves pain, the more we are likely to struggle with that pain when it arises, thereby creating more suffering. It sounds like a really straightforward sentence, but it's actually really, really deep. There's a difference between pain and suffering. To make it a little bit oversimplified, but pain is like the physical sensation, and suffering is from the meaning we attach to the pain, and it's from our psychological response to the pain. So basically, if we are assuming that if we just did the right things, that we can avoid pain, then when pain happens, we struggle with it versus accepting it. And so I was dragged kicking and screaming into acceptance. This did not make any sense to me when I first learned it. That's why it's so delicate for me to talk about it. I'm so passionate about it on the one hand because it has really changed my life for the better, but I am reluctant at times because I'm imagining the people listening to this being in the position I was before, being like, what are you talking about? So again, please, if I love talking about this stuff now though. So if you are confused and this doesn't make sense, let me know. But when the therapist first told me about accepting pain, I was like, no. Again, I'm an optimist. I don't want to accept pain. I want to fix it. I want to make it go away. Again, I was kind of pissed off to be honest, but it's like that Gloria Steinem quote again, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. So the therapist explained that true acceptance of the present moment is really different than giving up or resignation. Acceptance of the present moment is something where Dr. Russ Harris says it doesn't mean you have to like your uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. It just means you stop struggling with them. Acceptance literally means taking what's offered. It doesn't mean giving up or admitting defeat. Doesn't mean just gritting your teeth and bearing it. It means fully opening yourself up to your present reality, acknowledging how it is right here and now, and letting go of the struggle of life as it is in this moment. End quote. So when Dr. Russ Harris says that, it's like, I can accept that this present moment is what it is. In this moment, I might have pain. That doesn't mean that I have to give up hope that in the future, I might be able to manage my pain better. Or maybe my medications will work better in the future, or I'll get some relief in the future. Those are thoughts that can still coexist with acceptance in the present. But the acceptance of the present is about literally what's happening right now. When you're in pain, your brain wants to protect you, right? So your brain is putting off a bunch of signals when you're in pain saying, oh my gosh, do something about this, fix this, fix this. And with acute pain, there's something that you do need to do. Usually it's, oh, take your hand off the burning stove. Okay, you need to take an action. Unfortunately, with chronic pain, sometimes there isn't anything more we can do to reduce the pain in the moment. So instead of struggling with that, we can say what's still available in the present moment. So acceptance and commitment therapy, the ACT, some people break it down to say A is acceptance, C is connecting to what's possible in the present, and then T is taking meaningful action. So saying, okay, not just I'm just going to sit here and accept this, you're saying, okay, what can I still do that's valuable and meaningful in my life despite this pain? And that has been what's been really, really empowering to me because it means that my happiness and the value of my life is not contingent on me controlling my pain in a perfect way or finding the way to cure or heal my illness. It means I can still discover ways to have a good life, even when pain is present. And it's more exciting and empowering than I imagined it would be. Let's put it that way. Again, Dr. Tavares and Dr. Hopperstad, those are both my therapists. I want to give them credit here. They taught me, what can I still do despite this pain? What can I still engage in that's valuable to me? So basically, again, they helped me let go of this illusion that if I just did the right thing, I could avoid pain. And that's really what set me free. There's a balancing act between, again, I have a symptom and I have a toolkit and a toolbox, a metaphorical and physical one. For those who've seen my TikToks where I show all my life hack gadgets, I'm having trouble with something, I have a kind of a choice. Plan A is to fix the problem, remediate it, and then plan B is to work around it. And in occupational therapy, we call the workarounds compensatory strategies. In a way, acceptance is a little bit like a compensatory strategy because it's saying, I can't fix this at the moment. It is what it is. What can I still do that's meaningful? So the thing that's also good about this approach, and again, using it in your toolbox, is that there's a lot of time and energy that people put into running away from their pain or running away from their disease in terms of rheumatoid arthritis and trying to go down these rabbit holes of fixing it and curing it and doing the perfect diet or the perfect XYZ that's going to make your disease go away, when that time could be spent running towards things that are still available to you. Unless you're in a coma, you still have choices. You have things that you can do that are valuable in this world. Your life has value. And so I think some of the conflict I have around this idea of I have to make my rheumatoid arthritis go away before I can have a quote unquote normal life, it kind of feels like it prioritizes able bodied lives as more valuable or more normal. Yes, most people would choose to not have a health condition if they could choose. I would not choose to have this. If I had a choice between having rheumatoid arthritis and not, I would choose not to have it. That doesn't mean that I still can't find meaning in my life, though, and still can't have a good life despite it. But of course, I would choose to not have it because it's introduced a lot of burdens and challenges. At the same time, yes, I have learned a lot from those challenges. I'm not going to say I would prefer to have it than not have it. But I just think that, again, because suffering is inevitable part of the human condition, and because there is no such thing as who's the normal person? Are we going to choose one person? Is it Sarah who lives in North Dakota? Is she the person? Are we all going to we have to choose one person that represents normal? I don't know. There's just it's a little bit problematic to me to say that a normal kind of able-bodied life is the one that everyone should always aspire to. So again, kind of as I started alluding to earlier, accepting the inevitability of pain was definitely challenging for me at first, but once I did, I really do think I have a different kind of optimism. Initially, I thought I had this optimism of if I just find the right solution, I'm going to make my pain go away all the time, or my rheumatoid arthritis is going to have no effect on my life. But once I accepted that it is going to have an effect on my life, I had a new kind of optimism that basically says me and other people with rheumatoid arthritis and similar rheumatic diseases, we can still live a rich and full, meaningful life despite what's going on. I actually was looking back on an old blog post I wrote when Charlie was a year old, a guest blog post about kind of my postpartum journey and challenges. And I said there that I accept that even if I were in perfect health, there would still be limits to what I could achieve in life, but I also accept my health is an additional limiting factor beyond my baseline mortality that given the choice I would choose to live without. But after mourning everything I've lost, I have felt more fully present and grateful for what I still have. One of my favorite quotes comes from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And in the first 15 months of Charlie's life, I kept waiting till I could figure things out and when I could get back to 100% with my health. And at that point, I meant back to 100% as in back to my pre-pregnancy state where I still had rheumatoid arthritis, but it was under better control. But through therapy, I realized the more important question to ponder is, what if this is my only chance to be Charlie's mom?
It's not how I imagined or hoped it would be, but it's the chance I get. What can I gain from accepting my world as it is rather than anxiously attempting to control it or tweak it so I can achieve this elusive concept of feeling better in the future? If I fixate on the future, what have I lost in the present? I'm hoping that will help people who are who are just struggling. And I get it. I wish I wish I could just sit here and be like, listen to this blog post. I'm going to tell you all the ways in which your life is totally going to be exactly what you always hoped and dreamed it would be before your diagnosis. And unfortunately, I can't say that again, but I can say that you can still lead a good and meaningful life. I do know that in my heart. And so my whole mission right now in life is to help people with these kind of diseases learn how to thrive despite them, because I think there's so many voices out there that are offering programs and offering strategies to make the disease go away. And again, I take my medicine every day. I take my medicine to help slow down my disease progression. And that's extremely important to have tools in your toolbox to minimize the symptoms, to manage the symptoms, to make the disease not wreak havoc on your body. But at a certain point, again, there has to be a voice in the space, in the chronic illness space, to say, what can we still do despite our condition? How can we maximize our quality of life, maximize our fulfillment and our happiness despite it? And that's what I'm feeling particularly passionate about right now. That's why I developed Room to Thrive, which is my new membership community. The mission of the group is to offer educational content and support to people who have these diseases to help them, again, learn how to thrive despite them. And Thrive is an acronym that I created the T stands for tools for pain and fatigue. The H is our healthy habits. The R is relationships, so like how our conditions affect our social life. The I is our inner world, like how it affects our mental health. The V is valued activities, so what can we still do despite? And E is executive functions, so figuring out how to be the executive CEO of your illness care team and track your symptoms and stay organized. And so my philosophy that I'm sharing with you here about can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis is embodied in the mission of the group. It's saying that, yeah, we can thrive. We are going to do our best to thrive, and we are going to use tools to minimize our symptoms, but we're also going to use tools to maximize our quality of life despite our symptoms. To reiterate a little bit, I think a lot of people get stuck in this mentality that they have to wait until the symptoms are fully controlled. I'll wait and put my life on hold until I can sort out my rheumatoid arthritis. And I really want to encourage you to kind of see what is still possible. What is still possible in your life? What good things can you still do and enjoy and accomplish despite it? That's really been a wonderful thing for me to see people kind of confronting in the chronic illness community lately. And it's what I've tried to do in my rheumatoid arthritis roadmap program and now with Room to Thrive. So I am so excited to get started with that community. And I think in conclusion, normal. What is normal? Can you live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? I really do think it comes down to what is your definition of normal and how severe is your illness. And I don't even know if someone would characterize my life as normal or not. I really don't know. I think it's a really hard question to answer. I think the question that I kind of focus my life more on is, can I live a good life? Can I be of service to other people? Can I leave the world better when I leave it than I found it? And that question is easier for me to answer. I can do those things with rheumatoid arthritis. Despite rheumatoid arthritis, I can have a good life. I can have a meaningful life, fulfilling relationships. Is it harder than it would be if I didn't have rheumatoid arthritis? Sometimes yes, other times no. It's made me a more empathetic person. I think that's the question that I find more interesting. But I know that 50 million people have been curious about the answer to this questions. Can I live a normal life with rheumatoid arthritis? So I think it's worth exploring, which is why I made it today's topic. So I would love to hear from you. If you want to send me a response to this, send me an email at info@myarthritislife.net. Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is supported by Room to Thrive, an educational program I created to help empower you to live life to the fullest with rheumatic disease.
In the program, you're going to learn evidence-based tools for managing all the ways rheumatic disease affects your life. And my goal is to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. You can go through the pre-recorded modules on your own in the self-paced course, or you can take the course along with a robust support group of new arthritis friends to support you and cheerlead you along the way. Learn more in the link in my show notes, or you can always go to www.myarthritislife.net. And if you like this podcast, I'd be so honored if you took the time to rate and review it. I also encourage you to share it with anyone you know who might benefit from it. I also want to remind you that you can find full transcripts, videos, and detailed show notes with hyperlinks for each episode on the Arthritis Life website, plus full episode videos on the Arthritis Life YouTube channel. If you have any ideas for content for future episodes, or you want to share your story on the podcast, please send me, Cheryl, an email at info@myarthritislife.net. I can't wait to hear from you, and thanks so much again for your time.